Welcome to Crazy Believe with Nelsa. I'm Nelsa, your host, and our show today is about reclaiming your joy. So, what do I mean, reclaiming your joy? Well, I think there are times in our lives, I know in mine, where we feel like we've hit our stride, we're in the groove, we're doing our thing, and it looks like we're hitting everything on all cylinders. And then there comes that place in our lives where we start to peel off. There's a situation that maybe occurs. I can think like when I'm working out, especially. I have one day out of the gym, and it looks like it throws my whole workout into like non-existence. And so I think there are situations in our lives that occur that sometimes feel like we've been robbed of our joy, or we've given it away, or we've somehow lost it. And so my encouragement to you today is don't let anything or anyone steal your joy. And the reason for that is if we don't have that sense of inner peace, of contentment, of um, eternal optimism or joy springing up. It's not that woo woo positivity where nothing ever goes wrong in your life, or when it does, you try to come up with all sorts of things to say to dress it up and put lipstick on a pig. But we're talking about really, even in those dark days, like when I lost my dad, it was one of the worst experiences of my life in terms of depression and really not feeling like anybody understood what I was going through and feeling very alone. And so it felt like I had no connection points in my life. And it took a lot of just getting real with the situation and really admitting to myself the hole that was in my heart at the loss of my dad, at the changing of my family with him being gone, and even the dynamics that changed with my children, my mom, just everybody in my life. It was different without him. And so it felt like nothing was ever going to get back right anymore. And I had felt really low when my grandparents died, who were really big uh, mentors and role models and a big portion of my life. But that hole didn't feel the same as when my dad died, somebody who was 50% of my DNA, if you will. And so it looked like I was never going to be happy again, like I was never going to laugh again and not feel like crying right after. Um, it was a really dark time for me. And while I didn't share it necessarily with everyone in my life because I wanted to make sure my kids stayed fine, and I wanted to make sure that on my job I was still capable of taking care of other people, I can remember there were days where I cried so hard and I didn't want to be heard by my staff. I crawled under my desk. It was that serious for me. And I'm sure those of you who have experienced loss probably can imagine what I'm talking about. And for those of you who can't, I pray that you don't have to experience it anytime soon. But if you live long enough, it comes to us all. So, in reclaiming my joy, one of the first things that I had to do is I had to admit how bad I was, like how sad I was, how angry I was, how um, just torn up inside I was in that experience. And it took a lot of digging deep and kind of plummeting. Just when you thought you had hit rock bottom, you hit another rock on the way down. And so when I look back at it now, 2 years later, almost, or almost 3 years later, 2.5 years, um, I think, what was it that stopped the bottoming out? And one of those things was my crazy belief. Um, it was a muscle that I had been practicing when things went well, or when little things fell off the track, when little problems were creeping up, or things that might have seemed momentous at the time really paled in comparison to the death of my dad and the shakeup that caused in my life. And so, but that muscle had been practiced when everything was going well. And so that was one of the first places that I turned to, was my faith in God, and faith that everything was working out on my behalf. Like everything is always, I believe, working out for our good. So for those of you who may be experiencing loss due to COVID or other things that have happened, lost loved ones, lost jobs during this downturn in the economy, um, I, I implore you to start using your muscles of faith. And if you haven't been, this is a really hard time to get started, but it's better late than never. And I don't mean this in a platitude way to, believe everything will be all right, sweetie, and it'll be all right. No, it looks really bad for a lot of people right now. And um, sometimes the first thing we need to do is turn off the TV. Stop allowing the bad news, the extra bad news, to infiltrate your mind and your spirit. You know, if you're a Christian, read your word. If you're a different faith walk, get quiet and still and allow yourself to have some mental peace. Taking deep breaths and really focusing on just the breath as you meditate. Even if it's hard at first, if the thoughts just keep looking like they're just coming and coming and coming, just keep breathing and release. I like to think of it like fishing, catch and release. The thought comes, you breathe, and then you let it float on by you. There's so much power in just deep breathing and meditation and prayer. And prayer is nothing more than talking out loud or in your head to God, your source, your spirit, your guide, whatever your term is. For me, it's God. And so that time in prayer and really crying out in my distress, one of the Psalms says, I cried out to the Lord. And sometimes I think we want to try to dress up our hurt for God. And God already knows what we feel. God already knows how hurt we are. And I think it's just really waiting for us to get real about it so that the healing can take place. Um, and I know it sounds like, well, this sounds like the total antithesis of joy, Nelsa. You keep talking about, acknowledging the pain, but I don't think you can do any real work in your life until you first acknowledge where you are. Once that step has taken place, then you can start to do the action steps that are going to move you forward to whatever your next step is or your next plateau. One of the other things that really helped me during that dark time in my life was knowing that I had built a support system. And even though everybody didn't always understand exactly where I was coming from in my loss, the fact was there were people that I could pick the phone up and cry to. I didn't do it every day. I didn't do it, extended periods of time. Sometimes it was just me and God. And that was a place I had to get to as well. But in the meantime, there were people who showed up for me. And the reason I think people showed up for me is because I always wanted to be a person who showed up for people. And so, the principle of you reap what you sow. Look around at your relationships before things fall apart in your life. Are you tending your gardens? Are you tending to those friendships? Are you tending to those relationships in your family? Are you tending to you? Are you in good, right relationship with yourself, first of all? And being able to call on those people and even to look inside at my own heart for me, opened my eyes to the fact that I had given pieces of myself away, never asking sometimes in return for anything from anybody. And sometimes, as my daughter says, Aslan, I'm giving you credit for this, closed mouths don't get fed. And so sometimes we need to tell people what we need. We need to articulate as best we can that right now I just need you to listen. Right now I just need you to just give me a hug, to hold me, to just be there. I don't need you to say anything. Sometimes people want to be there for us, but they don't know how. And so as best as we can, we should speak our truth. We should allow people to love on us in those times of hurt and distress and disconnect. I think the hardest thing about COVID has been that feeling of disconnection. Sometimes that has crept in for me. But what I'm discovering is it's okay to reach out and just say, hey, I was thinking about you. I know I've been kind of going through, and I wanted to know if you're okay. Because sometimes there are people in our lives that we think have it all together, just like so many people I think thought I did for such a very long time. Um, and they don't realize that being strong is sometimes a very hard thing to do when your world has altered on its axis. So, finding your joy, reclaiming your joy, it is a journey. It's not going to be a silver bullet. There's not going to be one thing that you do that immediately elevates you to a new high. Yeah, I don't recommend drugs. I don't recommend drinking. I don't recommend those things because those are temporary highs that you're going to get. And being able to create a lasting joy that gets you through the dark days is a process. It's one of those things that you've got to build on each day with what comes and keep building. Don't stop. When I say crazy believe, I mean, you know, in the midst of your storm, see yourself reaching to the other side. See yourself coming out of it okay. See yourself being stronger, being better, being able to um, reach back and help somebody else like my mom has done. My mom has been such a real um, support person to women who have lost their husbands because now she knows what that feels like. She can help guide and give people advice, and not necessarily advice like that. She's not going around telling people, what they ought to do. But when asked, she knows what it feels like. She has that sense of empathy for widows due to her own widowhood. And I think it's just a way that when we can give back, that's a part of our healing process. That's a part of what gets us through to the other side. So if you are in a place where you're struggling right now, one of the things that I have not done on my YouTube channel, but I feel so moved today to do so, is I just want to put up a prayer of just peace and um, thanksgiving. And I just want to be able to pray for those of you out here who are searching and you don't know what the right answer is right now. But I just want to pray that you will be able to find what you need in this season. So I just want to speak out loud. Spirit, we just thank you, oh Heavenly God, for what you have done for us in this season. And for those who are watching and who may not know which way to turn, we just ask that you would just send what they need in the way that they need it, God. Just allow them to be able to feel the healing power of your sun rays, your bird song, your nature, Lord, the rain that falls on our faces, allowing us to know that, God, you're real and that you care for us. And for those, Lord, who may be lost in their suffering, God, give them a rope, a safe haven to turn to as they come through these periods of mourning. God, we know that mourning does turn to laughter eventually, and that while it's a process, we just have to hold on to our faith. We have to hold on to our belief. We have to hold on to the memories that will help propel us forward, to the relationships that will help us to move past where we are. And so right now, God, I just ask that you would pour out your healing on our land, on those who are going through due to loss from COVID or heart attacks or wrecks or just job burnout, Lord, the stress from just not knowing from day to day what's going to happen. We just pray for peace in our minds, peace in our homes, peace in our world. And we know that, God, you are able. I just thank you right now for the opportunity to minister to those who are watching. And I pray that, Lord, none might be lost according to your will. Amen. Thank you for tuning in. I know this one was a little different, and I just pray that whoever needs this message, just hold on. Just hold on. Keep crazy believing, and just know that joy comes in the morning. That morning may not be the very next day. It may not be 2 weeks from now. It may not be 2 years from now. But you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep it on. And be open to receive it when it comes. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe. Please like the video. I'd love to hear your comments about um, how you are reclaiming your joy. And I just wish you all peace and love. Until next time.